Well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Frisco Career Transition Workshop, sponsored by Stonebriar Community Church. Um, Stonebriar has been our supporter and provided the facility to do this in person, but with the COVID pandemic, we've decided, and the Lord has provided the resources for us to do this in weekly segments via Zoom, and we're happy to have all of you with us. My name is John Luce, and I'm part of the team that puts this together, and we're just glad you're here. So I'd like to just say a special thanks to Stonebriar, and I also want you to note that this event is being recorded. It's also currently running live on Facebook. The recording will be on Career DFW Facebook page in the future to review, and also on Career USA YouTube channel for others to view in the future. So if you haven't subscribed to the Career USA YouTube channel, a lot of good information on there that our friend and collaborator Jeff Morris has posted, and so we really urge you to do that. By participating in this event, since we're recording it, please be aware that if you post a comment in the chat box or have your microphone or camera on, you're giving consent for your comments, name, and picture to appear in the recording when in the future it's on YouTube or Facebook. So we want you to be aware of that. A couple of strategic things we'd like you to be aware of. Please, if you're on Zoom, use the chat box to enter any questions you may have. The best way to do that is to please begin with a question mark and then your question. After the presentation is completed, we'll get our expert panel to address and answer your questions. If you're on Facebook watching instead of Zoom, just enter your question in the comments field on Facebook, because we will be monitoring that. Today's agenda is we're going to have a message of encouragement from Steve Fisher, who's a pastor at Stonebriar Community Church. He's the lead pastor of Care Ministries. He serves on a team that provides hope for those who are broken, discouraged, and hurting. And he has an exceptional way of approaching the road bumps that we experience, especially in any walk, but many of us are experiencing those road bumps during this time of unemployment and uncertainty during the COVID pandemic thing. So that'll be followed by our main presentation. We titled it "Jumpstart Your Search" by Locke Alderson. And Locke has been with the team for almost since the beginning, and we're grateful to have him. And he's got, I keep wanting to come up with a number and I always come up with the wrong one, so I'm not going to do that today. But Locke has been in various fields as a recruiter in various industries and has a lot of experience and information to share to help those who may be a little lost in their job search. So after the presentation, we will engage our Q&A panel, which will consist of Locke Alderson and Rex Sowett, who is one of the founders of this workshop. For 19 years, he's been helping to lead this workshop. Rex now lives on the East Coast, but he takes time from his busy schedule every time we present this workshop to support us, and he will be giving a presentation next week on the 22nd. Lori Davis, who's been part of this team a long time as well as a recruiter, and will be helping us answer questions, especially from the recruiter's point of view, on which he has a particularly sharp perspective. Foster Williams, who I hope will join us. Foster's got a very busy day on Tuesdays, and you may know him as the founder of the Career Search Network and one of the moderators of the Frisco Connect job networking group. And not last, but certainly not least, is Jeff Morris, who is the founder and sustainer of Career DFW, just one of the best resources in the nation for helping people be aware of what's going on in activities for networking, workshops, seminars, and all the tools and resources that you can use for helping you in your search for employment. So we're going to start off. This is a recorded message from Steve Fisher. If you've attended this workshop before, you may have heard this message. Steve has been extremely busy lately, and we've got him tagged to create some new recordings because it's very difficult for him to show up in person. But he loves doing this, and so we're going to hear from Steve right now.
Hi, my name is Pastor Steve Fisher, and I'm the Care Ministries pastor for Stonebriar Community Church in Frisco, Texas. On behalf of our senior pastor, Dr. Chuck Swindoll, we are grateful to continue our association with the Career Transition Workshop. Stonebriar has had a long association with Rex and his team, and we are humbled to continue to support their efforts during these unprecedented times. So first and foremost, Rex, to your team, God bless you all for the work that you're doing. Now, Rex has asked me to say a few words of encouragement before this workshop begins. And to be quite honest with you, that's a pretty easy task for me at most times, to speak encouragement. But I am a little bit more reflectful, and I want to choose my words wisely, for this is truly an unprecedented time. And the last thing I want to do is to come off and trivialize anything or speak words that just are meant to make you feel good. I pray these words, you will draw some meaning that is truly helpful for you in these times. The last several weeks in my role at Stonebriar, I've met with dozens and dozens of people over the Zoom or Teams ministries. And there's a common refrain. Goes something like this: I am where I am, and it is what it is. And in those utterings, there's a sense of hopelessness. Many times a sense of I have no idea what to do or where to go. And so I pray that through the few moments I have, perhaps you might find a different perspective that will help you move through this into your next appointment, into your next assignment. So I grew up in Wisconsin, lots of farms around Wisconsin, and I worked on those for summer jobs. And I remember a very consistent process that all farmers, or quite frankly even gardeners, go through. It's called the law of the farm. And I'm just going to talk about really the first two pieces of that. And perhaps next time we can visit and I can talk through the rest of it. But the first part of getting the soil ready to plant involves a very violent process, a process that is disruptive, to say the least, and that is the tilling of the soil. I remember taking a hoe and just hammering into hard soil from the cold Wisconsin winters. And it was hard work, and it was very disruptive with rocks and dirt and everything flying around. Looked very chaotic. But it was necessary, wasn't it? For Scripture talks about, and again, we don't throw seeds on hard ground. They won't take root. And so during this COVID season, many who have been displaced or furloughed from jobs have had an abrupt disruption of their life. And many of the things that they counted on have been broken up in a very quick and sometimes very disruptive and perhaps even violent fashion. You didn't see it coming. You didn't plan for it. You had no idea. But that disruption, that plant, that breaking of the soil, that breaking of the routine creates an opportunity. And that comes next, and that is the planting of the seed. Now, common sense would say you don't plant corn and expect potatoes to grow. What you plant is what you expect to harvest. And so the question I have for all of us is, what type of seeds are you planting right now? Are you developing new skills, meeting new people, perhaps looking at a different life pathway? Are you planting those seeds that will help you? Are you planting seeds that are still perhaps stuck in some bitterness? Planting seeds that are full of fear, perhaps even anger? Seeds that keep you distant from people as opposed to involved with people. For the seeds you plant after the disruption of the soil will dictate what you will harvest when it does come harvest time. And there will be a harvest time. I'm confident of that. Perhaps you are planting seeds that will give you a new perspective on your life. New opportunities to look at these higher level questions sometimes. What's life about? What am I doing with my life? Where do I want to go? Perhaps these times will even encourage you to look at your faith differently. Perhaps faith wasn't a part of your life at all. And perhaps this is a time where you're asking the question, okay, God, if you're there, what do you got for me? How are you going to help me through this? Perhaps it's a time for some of you who may revisit the faith of your youth, the faith that long ago has not been part of your life. Those are the opportunities I think that exists now. So in the midst of the fear and in the midst of the concern, in the midst of the uncertainty, and in the midst of the responsibility to begin to look for new work, there's also new opportunity because of this disruption. And the question really is what seeds are you planting? What seeds do you want to take root and grow and ultimately harvest as we go down the road of your life? I don't think many of our day-to-day busyness sometimes allows us to reflect on things like this. And again, I don't want to come across again as dismissing the real concerns. Keeping the lights on, keeping the mortgage, keeping a child in school, keeping a college opportunity going. All of those are real. And I am confident concerns that we all have. But in those concerns, there does create an opportunity. And I would encourage you to begin to ask yourself those questions, to ask others those questions, to don't let this season go without an opportunity to look at what you and what your life is planting. So there's a story that I want to tell you, and some of you may have heard it before, but I think it sends a message. So a while back, I'm not sure the price point anymore, the most expensive coffee was a coffee called Kape Luwak, and it came from Indonesia. And the reason this coffee was the most expensive was because of a unique harvesting method. You see, there's a cat in Indonesia called the civet cat, like a bobcat, we would say. And this bobcat has taste buds for this particular plant in Indonesia, this particular coffee plant. And so the civet cat will eat the berries, the coffee berries, from this plant. And there's something unique about the digestive enzymes, apparently, of the civet cat, that when they eat the bean, the enzymes that are in within the cat create in these beans the most robust, rich, exquisite, I've never had a cup of this coffee, exquisite bean that makes the most delicious cup of coffee, I'm told, that exists. The unique part is this, is the harvesting of those beans. I'm going to let that sit for a second. See, the civet cat eats the beans. They're brought into the cat's digestive system, and then they're pushed out. And the harvesting method is just what you think it is. People go through the scat of the civet cat, and they pick these beans out. And then they're roasted, and they make the coffee. And so I think the metaphor perhaps is playing out for you. That's what it feels like sometimes. That there's just a big mess. And here's what I'm confident about. That our God, the God of the Bible, has this brilliant ability, this amazing ability, to reach down in the mess of our life and pick out the most valuable parts of you and I. You see, He loves us. He says in His Word that He will never abandon us. He will never leave us. COVID-19 virus, furloughed, my job has been eliminated. Whatever our life brings us, our God looks down in the mess that exists and pulls out you and I and says, this is rich. This has flavor. This has texture. This has value. This has value. That's you and I. And so I hope during this season that you are looking at, after this disruption, what seeds have you planted? Those seeds that will bring a bountiful and good harvest. Seeds that talk about new skills, new friends, new people, new perspectives, new relationships. Perhaps that relationship with God is at the very top of that list. But I am confident that no matter what mess you're sitting in right now, there's a God that loves you, that has the capacity to reach down and find beauty in the midst of a mess. And that beauty is you. So I know you are in for an incredible session with the Career Transition Workshop. I pray this short message encouraged you, that no matter where you're at, God loves you and will see you through it. Those aren't just church words that as a pastor I'm supposed to say. I believe that with every ounce of my being. So enjoy your time. If there's any questions, if there's anything we can do at Stormbriar Community Church to help you out, perhaps you need a little more encouragement, please feel free to contact me. Again, my name is Steve Fisher. My phone number is 469-252-5368. My email, you can get it off our website. It's Steve Fisher, STEVEFISCHER @stonebriar.org. And if there's anything we at Stonebriar can do, we'd be privileged to do that. So have a great session. And again, Rex, and to your entire team, God bless you.
Gee, it'd be nice if I could get myself to unmute. Well, that was Pastor Steve Fisher, and we're grateful for his support and his concern and his ability to share words of encouragement with us. Now, before we go to Locke, I'd like to take a few minutes to acknowledge our Frisco Career Transition Workshop team. As I talked about earlier, one of our founders, Rex Sowett, and Gail Houston is another founding member of the leadership team. And Gail works as a recruiter at Intuit, and unfortunately her schedule didn't allow her to be with us today. But she is aware that we're meeting and is with us in spirit. Locke Alderson, who you will meet in person in a moment. Gail Bridgman has also been a member of this team for some time. And Gail is not available to be with us in person again today because of her schedule, but we're grateful and look forward to seeing her in the future. Laurie Davis, as I mentioned earlier, is a recruiter and has been with us through these Zoom meetings, and we're grateful for that. Foster Williams, as I mentioned earlier, and Jeff Morris. But I'd also like to mention, in addition to Steve Fisher, there are two ladies at Stonebriar Community Church that do a lot of back office coordinating and support that almost everyone is unaware of, and that's Karen Hawkins, who is in the pastoral leader of missional living at Stonebriar Community Church, and Jean Allen, who is a lead administrator and a pastoral leader also in missional living at Stonebriar Community Church. And they help coordinate an awful lot of the back office things that help this workshop to take place. So I would just like to acknowledge all of those people. So now we're going to get on to the meat of the meeting, and that is the presentation by Locke Alderson. I recommend that, as Jeff has mentioned, if you want to go up in your upper right-hand corner and go to speaker view, whoever is talking at the time will be the predominant video that you see. And if you're on speaker view, you can also take the little two vertical lines between the picture of me and Locke or whoever, and you can move it left or right to change the ratio of which image you're seeing as Locke brings up his presentation. Also, again, if you want to put questions in the chat, please start with a question mark, and you can send it to everyone so they're aware of your question, and we will monitor that so that when the panel gets together after Locke is finished, we can address those questions and get them answered. So Locke, it's all yours, my brother.
Hopefully you can see that. I can't see you. I have to go back and end that. Sorry about that. We'll get the technology worked out.
Okay, we don't see your presentation yet, sir.
Well, let me.
We're still on Jeff's deck. So there you go.
Okay, we've got the technology worked out. I'll go to speaker view.
Looks good to me.
So we'll go from there. In addition to the information that's there on my bio, I'd like to tell you a little bit about me. I had 42 years in recruiting and HR. And in parallel with some of that, I've been 19 years in career consulting. Those are some of the companies that I've worked for, including my own firm, Alderson and Associates. In addition to that, I went to high school here in Dallas and went down to Texas A&M, got a degree in history there before going to California and getting an MBA at University of California at Berkeley. I am a believer in Jesus, want to make that part of my presentation. And through the times that I've been unemployed, and I've been unemployed, laid off at least 5 times and got fired once, one of the things that strengthened me through that time was to go to the Bible. My strength in the Word, and one of the verses that I drew comfort from was Psalm 139, which says, "The Lord knew me in my mother's womb before I was born and knows all the days of my life." Well, that's something to reflect on. Again, as we move forward, again, I've lost my job. I've lost my job 5 times as I was part of that process. And what do? We have a loss and it feels a part of us. We lose something and it has a great deal of meaning for most of us. We recognize that when you lose your job, it's letting go of something that was of value to you. One of the things that we want to take a look at is another verse of scripture. "For I know the plans that I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope in the future," from Jeremiah 29:11. That's another of those verses that are very meaningful for me as I've gone through this process. But when you come to that point where you're laid off, you've lost your job, now what do? Well, really, you're at a crossroads. And that crossroads, you begin to ask some questions. You haven't lost your skills and your talent. You may have lost a job. And while you're losing job as a personal event, you shouldn't take it personally, although most of us do. And recognize that it means that you're letting go of something that was of value to you. And you're going to experience a wide range of emotions. Those emotions, sometimes like a roller coaster. Some days you're high, some days you're not. Those emotions may include denial. Why did this happen to me? Or shock. Again, guilt or anger, remorse that you bargained with your boss. Maybe I shouldn't have gotten laid off. Those are some of the things that I want to go through. And another verse from scripture from Proverbs this time. "In his heart a man plans his way, but the Lord guides his steps." Well, part of that, what do you do next, is take a deep breath and try not to panic. And share the information with your family or your spouse or your neighbor, somebody that you can relate to, because they're in it with you in many cases. You want to reflect on situations in the past that you've handled successfully. I know on my particular lifestyle, in addition to being laid off 5 times and fired once, I've had a brain tumor. And when you hear that word from the doctor after he's gone through the evaluation of your CAT scan or your MRI, you hear that and you begin to go, take a deep breath and wonder how you're going to get through that. Well, fortunately, that surgery was 7.5 hours to remove a benign brain tumor, but I recovered from that. I've had torn rotator cuffs in both of my shoulders, and that requires 6 to 8 weeks in a sling, your wing in a sling kind of thing. And I've also gone through cancer, which is another one of those times when you take a deep breath, how am I going to make it through this? Well, fortunately, they caught the cancer in an early stage, and they were able to deal with it radiation, and so I'm a cancer survivor now. Another thing that you want to do is to not burn bridges behind you. There's that temptation to badmouth your boss or your former employer, your company, that they were a bad place to work, or former employees that worked with you. But I'll tell you, don't burn bridges behind you, because the people in the new company where you might be interviewing may be coworkers that you worked with before. One suggestion, if you have that feeling of being slighted by your former boss, is to type up all your gripes in an email, and rather than hitting send, you want to print it and take it outside with a match and burn it. It's very cathartic and freeing to get rid of all those emotions and go with that. Another thing that you want to do is to make finding a job a full-time job. Not 80 hours a week, but certainly 40 hours a week spent doing that, and dividing your time wisely. And take a look at your finances and your living expenses. Find out what's going to take to live on, because you may end up negotiating for a salary that's lower, but you need to know what your range is, what your minimum and your maximum. And one of the ways that you can do that is putting together a budget and then live within it. You're very fortunate if you have Excel as a spreadsheet. What you want to do is to do a spreadsheet, and I'll show you one in just a minute. It covers the basics. What are your food, your utilities, your shelter, and your transportation? Those are the major things that you need to take a look at. Here's just an example of a spreadsheet from Excel. They have a number of different spreadsheets that you can do. You can notice the various things that are on the list that are there. And they're helpful in putting something together. After you've gathered all your expenses, and if you haven't and don't know what they are, you want to start tracking them. And you want to include, where's your money coming from? But part of that is, once you've gathered the budget and figure out where your income is coming from. It may be from severance pay. It may be that you're at 59 and a half and decide now's the time to take Social Security. There's some advantages and definite disadvantages of taking Social Security early. I know my wife took hers early at age 62, and we had to pay for her insurance for 3 years until she was able to qualify for Medicare. I took mine after 65, so that wasn't a problem for me. If you have a pension plan, you may want to take it in a lump sum distribution. It comes to you. There are some disadvantages with that, such as taxes that you may owe on that. Likewise, you may draw into savings and checking account. I know one of the times when I was laid off for about 18 months, I was very fortunate that part-time engagements allowed me not to tap into my savings and checking. Certainly into the checking account, but not into the savings. You may want to dip into your IRA or your 401k or your life insurance. They all have loan provisions, or most of them do today. Or you can take a distribution for catastrophes. Some of those, the penalties on those have been waived. Sometimes if you take a distribution early on a 401k or IRA before age 59 and a half, you pay a penalty, a 10% penalty, and then you pay tax on it as income. Unfortunately, with the CARES Act in the spring of this year, they've waived the penalty on that. Unemployment, if you aren't filing for unemployment at the Texas Workforce Commission, is something that you need to do. Unfortunately, the CARES Act, which provided additional $600 a week for income, has expired at the end of August. And so most people aren't aware of that. And then the president's $300, I think that's gone as well, although that's retroactive if you haven't received it and are drawing unemployment from TWC. You want to talk about health insurance, because it's one of those things that if you have a major catastrophe, it can be very expensive. Perhaps your spouse is still working and has insurance and converts you to her plan. I know when I was working, my wife was on our plan, even though her employer provided insurance. So when I was laid off at least a couple of times, we ended up switching over to her insurance. There's COBRA. If you have insurance, COBRA is the cost of the insurance, and most employers will provide that. It gives you up to 18 months of coverage, but you pay for all the coverage. And if you're aware of that, your actual cost may be significantly more than what you've been having deducted from your paycheck. There are short-term health insurance plans that are available, as well as indemnity plans to take care of catastrophes. But what do you do now? One of the questions that you want to ask yourself, who are you? What do you want to do? One person asked me, what do you want to do when you grow up? And what are the things that you like to do? Do you know what you want to do? Do you want the same or similar kind of job? If not, you possibly want to go through an assessment of what and how you find out about that. Taking a look at your last job, what did you like about it? What didn't you like? What were the things that you want to look for in the future? Taking a look at your strengths and weaknesses, possibly taking Myers-Briggs or the DISC or a factor analysis, or Strength Finders can help you find that. Prior performance reviews will give you some indications of the things that you're good at, areas that you need to still work on. Any recommendations that you may have had on LinkedIn will also give you a pattern for some of that. You may want to write an article for the Reader's Digest, the greatest accomplishment in my career. Used to be the Reader's Digest, and the doctor's office would have some kind of an article like that each month. You may want to write your obituary. What do you want to be known for after you're not here anymore? Or write your ideal job posting. These kinds of ideas will give you something to work with in terms of identifying what you want to do. Review your competition on LinkedIn. If you do a people search on LinkedIn, you can look at your profile. If you were to run Recruiter, Dallas-Fort Worth, there are probably about 27,000 people with Recruiter in their profile. But if you don't show up in the first 10 screens, that's 100 profiles, then you may want to look at some of their profiles to see what words they're using, incorporate those in yours, and then revise your profile. The other thing I could say is, what do you enjoy doing when you forget to eat? You know, the things that you enjoy. Or what would you do if you didn't have to work? Those can give you some ideas of what you want to do in terms of finding your passion and considering the alternatives. Rex asked me one time to figure out and put together a chart on finding the difference between self-employment and being an employee. The biggest differences are in taxes. You have to pay quarterly taxes on your income, your estimated taxes, and you will pay, I think you deduct on a paycheck 7.5%. On if you're doing it yourself, it's 15.3% of the payroll, and likewise insurance benefits. Sorry about the phone ringing. I can't turn that one off. Okay. We'll move on. You want to do an honest reality check. And what's really happened to you? Are you aware of it? Were you laid off? Were you furloughed? Again, furlough offers some advantages that you can be recalled. Likewise, laid off or fired. Those are some of the things you want to evaluate. And again, what's happened to you. In many cases, you can't go back to what you've had, although in my case, I did go back to one employer 2 times after I'd been let go on layoff, and that was a wonderful time. That's something that you can look at. But taking a look at what's happened to you, you don't want to focus on the past, you want to focus on the future. It's kind of like when you get in your car. Most of us, if we're in a parking space, are going to look in the rear view mirror to see what's behind us, back out carefully, and then look ahead to us out the windshield. Well, the windshield is about 100 times the size of your rear view mirror. And again, you want to look at things look at things as they are, not as they should be or how you want them to be. And remember, you're not alone in this process. You're not an outcast, and you're certainly not a failure. How have you dealt with change? This is another thing that's why people say, well, older employers are dinosaurs. In many cases, people have gone through a number of changes in their lifetime. I can remember when a cell phone was really called a car phone. It was about the size of a brick and sat on the transmission hump in your automobile. Likewise, how many of you still have hard-sided luggage? Although it's coming back, many of us have gone to soft-sided luggage. And typewriters. Well, most of us don't use a typewriter. We might use a personal computer or a tablet to do our correspondence with. So those are some of the myths. And one of the reasons the older workers seem to be discriminated against is because they haven't kept up with the technology. It's not because of their age. But there are some myths that accompany older workers. They do possess knowledge of how things are done in the company and the process of procedures. I know when I was with a company called Mostec, that was back in the 80s, people would ask, if I were to tell them I worked for Mostec, well, what did they do? Well, unless you're an old timer, you wouldn't know. But again, recruiters with that kind of knowledge would know where to look for semiconductor type engineers. And what about discrimination? Well, age discrimination is real and something that you have to deal with. But again, it may be the situation where if they're discriminating against you, it may not be the place that you want to work. Again, another verse from scripture that comes up is Psalm 55:22. Cast your cares on the Lord, and he will sustain you. He will never let the righteous be shaken. And you may end up having to recalculate what your expectations are. So what just is the status? Well, these are the latest statistics that I could come up with. Unemployment in the Dallas area is 8.3% at the end of July, down from 13%. In April in Texas is down to 8%, was 13.5%. Nationally, unemployment is down to 8.4%, or 1 of 12 Americans are still out of work. And while Dallas is no longer ranked as the top job market in terms of job creation, it's still in the top 5. And there are a number of jobs here in the Dallas area. And some major companies like Amazon are adding people in the Dallas area. And that's not just for people to work in the warehouse or as drivers. So what are employers really looking for? Again, you can notice that picture up there. You notice that there's one apple that doesn't seem to be as ripe as the others, or maybe it's overripe. So employers are looking to not make mistakes and hire the wrong person. Bad hires cost money, cost budgets, and are tight, and headcounts are still limited. Even though we are on limited unemployment right now, again, companies are hiring. But again, they scrutinize the hires very carefully that they're making. It's hard to get replacement headcount approved in some cases. Once you've used a hiring biller or requisition, managers may have to get extra approval to hire somebody else. They want candidates who kept their skills current. What I want to ask somebody, what have you done to keep your skills current? What kinds of classes have you taken since you were laid off? Well, all of you who are attending this have attended a LinkedIn class or seminar, but how many other seminars are available? The others that are available on Career DFW, you can see on the slide over there to the right on my screen, they offer training on Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. They have about 100 hours of recorded seminars that are available that you can review on resumes and interviewing. They're all very valuable, and the speakers are great. Companies want to choose a winner. They want A or A+ players. They want high achievers. I know when I was with Siebel, the mantra that came down from Tom Siebel's office was, we're looking for only A+ players. Well, that's great until after a while you got all A+ players and somebody has to be ranked as a B. That's a difficulty that we'll deal with later after you're employed. So what do companies really look for? Well, they have 3 questions that they want to try and answer. They may not be questions that they ask you, but they're questions that they're asking in their minds. Can this individual do the job? Do they have the right training and skills and experience? Will they do the job? Can they hit the ground running and apply their skills and experience toward the success of our company? And lastly, do they fit the culture and have the flexibility and energy and enthusiasm we need to get the job done? Those are all things that count when you're looking at that. Again, I've run into this character a few times in my career. It's called a purple squirrel. And actually in the late 80s and early 90s, there was a magazine for recruiters called The Purple Squirrel. And basically what the manager is looking for there, they're looking for an ideal candidate. In terms of recruiters would attach to that, the perfect candidate is almost mythical in nature. And it's a rare character, has a perfect mix of skills and experience and education, and work for peanuts. And they're almost impossible to find. I know when I encountered a manager that said that to me, I frequently would ask, you know, I haven't seen too many of those in my years of recruiting. I've got some candidates I've identified that come pretty close. Could you take a look at these? Well, I continue to look for the candidate that you're looking for. In most cases, they would interview at least 1 or 2 of those candidates, and we made hires from those without finding the purple squirrel. And many of you have encountered something called the Résumé Black hole. The internet made it easy for you to send out multiple resumes each day, 10 or 20 or 50 in an hour. So companies adopted software to deal with that. And that Résumé Black hole, one of the reasons that they have that and that adopted that, companies like Amazon get multiple resumes. Google has over 20,000 resumes a week. That's over 1 million a year. And Monster has about 425,000 resumes each week to come up with that. So how do they deal with that? One of the ways that you want to deal with that, what that does, and probably nearly 100% of the Fortune 1000 companies have some kind of applicant tracking software to weed out, and that's the words I use, weed out resumes. They'll probably eliminate 75 out of 100 resumes that come in. And out of those that go on to a recruiter, there's some things that you wanted to have. So when you ask, well, why would I even have a resume? Well, first, it's a piece of advertising to get them to call you. Again, you have to get through the applicant tracking system. It has to be of interest, and they want to make them to pick up the phone or send you an email. Next, it's a script for an interview. They'll typically go over the interview with you, or over the resume with you during the course of the interview, getting you to tell about when you did this or when you did that. Unless perhaps it's a behavioral type interview, and they're going to ask you for examples of what you did in certain circumstances. And lastly, after you've had an interview, it's a reminder of who you are. I know when I had my own recruiting firm, I had one company that interviewed 40 candidates, one of whom was mine. He made it to the second round of 5 candidates. And the only way that I could imagine that manager kept track of those was to take copious notes on the resume. You want your contact information on the resume, make it easy for them to read. And by all means, check and double check the numbers that are on your resume, particularly your phone numbers, and check your email address to make sure that it's correct. No, I've had candidates that had incorrect phone numbers. They were amazed that they didn't get any calls because the call couldn't go to the right person. Your headline and summary are vitally important to that. Again, why are they so important? Because of the applicant tracking system is looking to match the headline, usually your job title, with the job title that they're searching for. And the summary usually contains information about you, probably keywords from your summary or from the job posting. Tell about your professional career. You want to give examples that can demonstrate measurable results that you've achieved, not just dollars and cents, but what did they do? How do they add credibility to your experience? And we'll show you in just a minute some examples of accomplishments that you may want to take a look at. You want to summarize your older experience. If you've got more than 10 or 15 years, you might list it under a separate heading, prior professional experience. Just list the name of the company and your job title, and perhaps there was an accomplishment accompanied that you want to include, but you don't have to go into as much detail as the more recent information. You want to tailor your resume to the job that you're applying for. One way that you can do that is to dissect a job posting. This is one that I took from working with a candidate, Again, you can see the name of the company. They're a company here in Plano. And again, down at the bottom, you see the job requirements that are required. We took the job requirements and pasted it into a job requirements table into the left column. And again, in the right column, to match the requirements with the examples from that individual's experience. They don't have to match exactly, but what they do is give you something to talk about when you have an interview. You can also use the accomplishments and paste them in the resume. This took the title from the job posting and also took and posted the jobs over here at the, you can see these bulleted items at the side from the job requirements table. You can also use that job requirements table during a phone interview. It gives you examples that you can speak from and tell a story from the qualifications. You can also use it in a cover letter. This just happens to be a cover letter. I call it a table cover letter. Most cover letters are in 3 sections. They have a section dealing with where you found the job. The second section is usually narrative or sentences describing how you match the qualifications. And the third area is how you, let's get together and talk about the time to go over the requirements and how you match up with that. I've seen those where the middle section was 5 paragraphs, far too long for anybody to read. But by incorporating a table with your qualifications, makes it easy for the reader to identify what your qualifications are and how you match the requirements of the job. Okay, this is achievements. And again, for anybody who's interested, if you send me an email at lockealderson@gmail.com, I'll send you the entire slide deck. Okay, but again, the questions that you want to talk about your accomplishments, again, in bulleted items on many resumes I look at, I ask the question, so what? What's the significance of this item? What's the rest of the story? Does it tell a complete story? What's the significance or the impact or the importance? What resulted from this activity? Because most resumes that I read as a recruiter, they simply talked about the individual's duties and responsibilities. They didn't talk about the results of performing those duties. I want to try and keep the momentum going. Maintain your focus and take it a day at a time. If you look at how am I going to pay the bills at the end of the month, and take it one day at a time until you find that next job, start a paycheck. You want to take care of yourself. Even with the Zoom meetings and video interviews today, your appearance on the screen is very important. Again, take care of your health. Make sure that you eat healthy, eat 3 meals a day, exercise regularly, and get enough sleep. This may be the time, if you want to do that, to lose a little bit of weight, and going through taking exercise. I know when I had a dog, we moved the last time when the dog ran away. I don't know whether you like the new apartment or not. But anyway, I used to take the dog 3 times a day for a walk of about 10 to 15 minutes. You want to put together a game plan. If you don't have one, you may want to put it together and revise it. You need to have a calendar. When we left employment, most of us had a daily or weekly calendar, like Outlook on the computer, the things that we had to do each day. I still keep a calendar. I was filling it out today with some engagements coming up in October and November today. And while mine just has 1 or 2 major activities a day, yours may have a lot more that you want to do, whether networking meetings, sending out resumes, things that you want to keep track of. Many people have a phone phobia. And what do I mean by that? Do you enjoy talking on the telephone? Well, if it's somebody we know, we probably are very comfortable with that. But making cold calls to an employer, a little bit more difficult. So if that's the case, perhaps what you want to do is to write out what you're going to say ahead of time. Visualize what that person's going to look at. Look them up on LinkedIn, see what they look like. It's a way to overcome that. And again, another verse from scripture that comes to mind is from Philippians 4:7. Be anxious for nothing, but in everything you do, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God will guard your hearts and your minds. You need to know what your strengths and weaknesses are. Again, companies still ask about those things. And again, if you have a weakness, it's kind of a downhill ski jump, if you will. You talk about the negative and end up with a positive. I know mine, when asked that question, I tend to be impatient with meetings that don't seem to have an agenda. Again, but I've learned to be a good listener to the people in the room or on the meeting so I can understand their perspective and offer and gain the insights that they have. I didn't say I'm no longer impatient with meetings because I still am. You want to build a support infrastructure of networking people, whether it's attending networking group meetings online or just meeting with somebody for coffee. And you want to network. Most of the jobs that people are looking for are found through networking. This is a chart that came from Lee Heck Harrison, where I work, and they interviewed candidates about how they found their last job. As you notice, 57% of them came from networking engagements, okay? I know Southlake's career focus group took statistics 1 year, and theirs were 46%. Depending upon your job level, anywhere from 40 to 80% of the jobs that you're looking for are through people that you know through networking. So if that's the case, when do you start networking? Well, if you aren't doing it, you want to start now. And you should always be networking, whether it's with the grocery store, the cleaners, your hairstylist, again, your insurance agent. Let people know that you're out of work. Ask for their assistance. You have that pitch, whether it's a 10-second pitch, a 30-second pitch, or a 2-minute pitch, to talk to people about it. Let them know that you're unemployed. You want to be attending groups like Career DFW has meetings on, in addition to the training on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursdays, Friday morning. As mentioned, Frisco Connect with Foster Williams and John Luce working on that on Tuesday mornings, every other Tuesday morning. So those are groups. You can go to employed groups, professional groups like CPAs, American Training and Development Society, Financial Executive Networking Group, Marketing Users Group, North Texas Mortgage Professionals. Again, these are all groups that have now virtual meetings, but you can attend a lot of those, and some of them are free. Business and service groups like Knights of Columbus, Rotary, Lions, Kiwanis, Chambers of Commerce have meetings that you're open to attend. Alumni groups and meetups in your particular professional field are meetings for that. And accountability groups and an accountability partner. And you want to become an employee referral. One of the reasons for becoming an employee referral is your resume will get extra attention. I know when I was with Siebel, resumes would trickle down from Tom Siebel's office, and we'd have to take a look at them. We didn't have to hire them. We didn't have to interview them. But we had to respond that we'd reviewed it in that case. Likewise, many companies have employee referral programs for bonuses. So if you hand it to somebody or get it in their hands, and it goes to your friend at the company and they give it to HR or recruiting, the recruiter has to be able to answer why or why not you were selected or not selected for the job. So you get extra attention on that. We'll move on to interviewing. There's a full session coming up on networking, a full one on interviewing. We'll talk a little bit about interviewing and kind of an overview of that. Informational interviews and face-to-face interviews. You want to practice interviewing. In doing your practice, you want to write out the questions that you anticipate being asked, along with your answers, and write out the questions that you want to ask. Some of those questions that you might want to ask are, what priorities that need to be addressed immediately for this job? Who was the last incumbent? Where are they now? What happened to them? Likewise, you need to be prepared about the company, do your research. The worst answer that you can give to a company when they ask the question, what do you know about our company? You say, well, not much. You'd accept that you do this. That's not the best answer that you want to give in terms of being prepared. You want to be honest and positive. Again, the honesty is important because too much information is available about you on the internet. If you falsify or exaggerate your experience, and certainly don't badmouth your employer, your former boss or coworkers, as I mentioned, because you never know when that'll get back to you as well. If it's a face-to-face interview, certainly you want to bring business cards and extra resumes with you. Ask the recruiter or the administrative assistant or the clerk, who am I going to be speaking with and how many people and what kind of people am I going to be speaking with? You want to be courteous if you're meeting people face-to-face, the gatekeeper, that receptionist at the desk, or the guard, in many cases with a gun. Some cases I've interviewed with those kind of situations as well. Informational interviews where you're only asking for information, not a job, can turn into a job interview. I've had situations where the people says, you know, we've been looking for somebody like you. Would you be interested in interviewing for a job? That's certainly a way to turn it around. And certainly job interviews, I know I've been in a couple where the job interview didn't work out. You knew that, and within 5 minutes, you can ask, well, who do you know that I should be talking to? You know a little bit about the market and who's looking right now, what kind of companies have people that are available. The last thing that you want to do in an interview is to ensure that you convince them that you're not a risk, going over your strengths and accomplishments. Again, LinkedIn is a vital tool today. It's the #1 tool used by recruiters to find candidates. Probably 90% of recruiters and hiring managers look at it to find candidates. If you have LinkedIn, you want to make sure that you understand that your profile is your homepage and is similar to your resume. You want to convince people that you're an all-star, which means that you've completed your profile. Your headline appears below your name, and that the job title that you're seeking should be there. If you don't include a job title, okay, that you're looking for, it will default to the last job title in your experience section. In your settings section, which is when you first do that, you want to indicate that you're open to new job opportunities. Once you've done that, it will appear before your name, and you can change those when you edit your profile with the blue pencil. Your contact information needs to be in the first line of your About section. The About section used to be called the summary. Reason being, the more clicks that you're asking somebody to make, if it's the bottom of your About section, the less likely they are to make the click. All of your education and professional development experience needs to be included, including webinars like this one, or those in your career field and workshops. Skills are vitally important because that's one of the areas that recruiters search on, is skills and career interests and endorsements. And your activity on LinkedIn also matters. This is just a quick look at my profile. You have 6 to 10 seconds to look at it. Just like that, it's gone. Again, those are the important things. You notice open to job opportunities gives you a chance to list some job titles that you would consider. Below my name is my headline. You notice I've used the 120 characters there to say the areas that I'm interested in. So to do things with your profile, you need to complete each section of your profile to achieve that all-star status. The name that you use, what is the name that you're called by? What do you want to be called? Should be the name that's on your resume. Your headline should include job title or job titles that you're looking for. Okay, if you don't include a headline, it will default to the last title under your job experience. You want to complete the job setting preference initially in settings, and then once you do that, it lets recruiters know that you're open to opportunities. Include your phone number and email in that first line of the About section. Your experience section should include the job titles and duties and measurable accomplishments. If the job titles are not well known, you want to explain in parentheses perhaps what's the job title is more commonly called in industry, and keywords from your expression and skills. These are the areas that recruiters actually search for when you do a search. So here is one for recruiter on LinkedIn. You notice that recruiter is there. If you start to type in REC, the artificial intelligence from the drop-down menu will give you a number of choices. If you click on one on the drop-down menu, it defaults to the United States. You're going to have to change the location to the United States unless you're open to relocation. This one, the other thing that you're going to want to take a look at is the filter section. You notice over here, when you click on the filter section, this is what it looks like. And a couple that you're going to want to check out, I always suggest that people check the last week, because first response to a posting on the internet and on LinkedIn is within the first 2 or 3 minutes. And there can be as many as 200 or 300 in the first hour. Something that LinkedIn has added recently is a salary section over here that you can indicate the salary level that you're at. The initial jobs we had of 2,000, almost 2,100, you can look at how many jobs there are. Most of the jobs that are shown are going to be full-time jobs. You can notice location, and you have an idea of who the companies are. Deloitte is looking for a number of people like that. And industry. And again, if you have particular experience in medical or healthcare, again, those are pretty restrictive in terms of they're looking for people with the same kind of experience. So wrapping up, you want to identify what you're doing that's not being successful, and quit doing it. That's a real basic one to get to. Okay? And don't apply for jobs where you really aren't qualified. I know when I was moved from Siebel over to Oracle, Oracle acquired Siebel. We were looking for a Siebel consultant in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I ran a job posting in that market, had 75 responses. 50 of them didn't even have the word Siebel in their resume. They were not qualified. Tweak your resume periodically in your profile on LinkedIn. Your activity on LinkedIn is one of those categories that gives you values when they do the LinkedIn searches. The algorithm measures that. Know who your competition is. As I mentioned, take a look at the people on LinkedIn for your particular field and find out if you show up in the first 10 screens. That's 100 profile thumbnail sketches of profiles. If not, take a look at their profiles and take some of the verbiage that's in their profile and incorporate it in yours if it applies. And don't try and boil the ocean. I know it used to be that you could do a resume and you could send it out to 50 different companies. Now you have to laser focus and focus on that. Again, by focusing on the job title, which is the headline, and possibly after the summary section, you may want to add a couple of bulleted accomplishments that contribute to what you've done in that particular job that support that job title. Touch your bases with your contact every 4 to 6 weeks. Again, if you haven't, it's good to make contact with them, perhaps a phone call or an email. Just wanted to let you know what's happening. I've had a couple of good contacts, a couple of good interviews, haven't found the right opportunity yet. If you should hear of something, I'd welcome the opportunity to follow up on that. I know on one occasion, I sent out my Christmas card list when I was laid off in 2003. I sent it out in November. January of 2004, my former boss at Siebel called and said, would you be interested in coming back to work? I was back on the payroll within a week. So that's something to consider about keeping involved. Become an employee referral and network. Again, you're going to get extra consideration on that. And participate in networking and accountability groups. And give and receive. You don't forget to volunteer. You can list that volunteer activity on your resume. What have you been doing since you were last employed full-time? You can list it on LinkedIn as a separate section now in terms of volunteer experiences. And send thank you notes to everybody. Don't just send it to the recruiter, but to everybody. Because I know when I got thank you notes, would you send this to the team? I frequently wouldn't do it because I had other things to keep me busy. Include some fun things in your calendar, whether it's going to Brahms for an ice cream or taking your kids to the park, or now it might be going back to the movies. I know there's still a few dollar movies around. I know the one in Plano, they converted to a full-time theater and updated the theater there. And keep up technically in your field. Reading articles and books, use that time while you're off to keep track of it. Take a look at some of the things that are on the internet, on Google, and see your Gmail, the activities that you get on there. And last, add some humor to your life. Can't have fun. Again, it will be overwhelming in terms of that. Thanks for allowing me to speak this afternoon. If you are interested in the slide deck, it's lockealderson@gmail.com.
Thank you, Locke. You did a marvelous job, as always, of doing a high-level overview. There's so much to cover, but as you mentioned in your presentation, we'll get into that a little deeper with some of the following week's presentations. So thank you very much for that.
Rex speaks next week on resumes. And the week after that, we have somebody, Gail Bridgman, who's going to speak on interviewing, and Gail Houston going to speak on using the internet for job search and how to use social media. And Jeff gets to speak on networking, and then Rex is going to come back and speak on negotiating your salary in times of the pandemic.
Yeah, good stuff. Thank you so much. So now we get a chance to put to the test our professional panel of recruiters and experts. And so if you have a question, you can, if you want to do it verbally, you can go down to the bottom of your screen to the reactions and raise your hand. That's actually a clap icon, but you could do that. Or you can type it in the chat with 2 question marks. There are a couple of questions that have come up, and one of them that comes up frequently, but this one's for you, Locke. Is there good value in hiring a professional writer to do your resume?
I don't recommend it because you're the one who knows your experience, okay? And again, you might be asked questions about things in your resume in an interview. Oh, I didn't realize that was in there. That kind of a response. So you have to be prepared. Again, resume writers can be good, and there are some decent ones out there. I don't want to disparage any of my fellow workers in that particular field because I've written my share of resumes and over time as well. But again, I don't recommend it. Foster's here. Maybe Foster has an opinion about that. He's looked at a million resumes as well.
Can you guys hear me? I'm not on my computer. I don't know if it's working.
No, you're fine.
Oh, good, good. Guys, if you do consult with a resume writer, that resume writer should walk along with you. They should spend plenty of time, and you should control what goes on that resume. Now, they will know how to formulate everything and all that sort of thing, but what is shared on that resume, they should be asking you pertinent questions so that you can adequately let everybody know on that resume what it is that you have the most experience at doing, in order that keeps it along the lines with what you want to do. But you should write that resume and not have them talk to you, take notes, and then go write a resume for you. That is disaster.
Thanks, Foster. And Lori, a question for you is, can you kind of give us a minute or two to dissect the difference that a candidate should know about between an agency or independent recruiter and a corporate recruiter, and if there's any difference maybe in approach or the perception? I don't know if did that make any sense?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Sure can.
Yeah, I understand. I think what you're asking is, what is the difference between an agency or staffing recruiter and a corporate recruiter like myself? So I have worked both sides of that desk, and they both have different purposes, and I think they both have good, good purposes. The difference is an agency or a staffing company typically is going to work with a lot of companies, and they really work more on a volume basis, where as a corporate recruiter, you're on the inside and you're typically only recruiting for positions within your own company and not for a lot of different companies. But I know there's a lot of negativity typically around the staffing companies, and I've heard it many times that the candidates don't feel that they are treated well. But you need to understand is that they also have a job to do. It's just a different model that they work under, and it is high volume and it's very high pressure. It's really not my favorite, but I will say that I have hired a lot of people on the staffing side of the house as well as a corporate recruiter. So I think the best advice I could give to the audience today is, when you're working with a recruiter, regardless of where they are on the staffing side or on the corporate side, to me, there's just a general rule of thumb. If they don't treat you with respect as an individual and a human being, just like any other professional that you would work with, say a doctor or a lawyer, I would not work with them. There are great recruiters on the staffing side. There are great recruiters as corporate that are corporate. And then there are those that are not so great, and it doesn't matter what type of environment that they work in. Does that help?
Yes, it does. And I think what I hear you saying also is, and Foster talks about it all the time, is as you approach the first time you interact with a recruiter, regardless which side they're on, it's all about your attitude and building the relationship. And you can discern if that relationship is going to be beneficial to you, or whether they're just doing a job to get a commission, or if they're really willing to go the extra mile and take the next right step to assist you.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
That's well said. Yeah, because they can have some really good jobs. I mean, when I was on the staffing side, Bank of America was a huge account for me. And I can't tell you how many people I hired. Capital One, they do have real jobs. And they do hire people. So as a job seeker, I absolutely would keep those options open for sure. I would not just disregard them because they're coming from a staffing company, not necessarily.
Right. Thank you. And Locke, Melanie Thorpe asked, can you share more about how to know your competition on LinkedIn?
If you go to LinkedIn and you go to the job search, do a job search for what you're looking for first. As you start to do a search, it'll offer the opportunity to look for a job, for people, for groups. You can select people and click on people. Now, if you do a people search, you have to remember that it defaults to the United States unless you select the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Okay, so that's a thing, that one of those filters that you need to use. But then you can look at people. You just click on their profile, that thumbnail sketch that's there, and find out if you're matching those kind of requirements of the things that they have in their profile. That's the best way to do it.
Okay. Melanie,
John, can I ask a follow-up with Locke, please? Locke, on LinkedIn, can a candidate see their competition on LinkedIn for a particular position?
I don't think they can. That's a good question to ask Kurt Vandemotter, who has the recruiter package. Kurt is coming up. What's his date, Jeff?
Let's see, you'll be on October 6th.
Okay, so he's an actual recruiter that uses one of the software packages that LinkedIn sells. It's $500 per seat for a month, for each month. So $6,000 in it. They get some extra bells and whistles that the average user doesn't have. I don't know whether Lori has the recruiter package or recruiter light. You have which one, Lori?
Recruiter.
Okay. So she can possibly answer that as well. But you can see the competition. I know one of the things about LinkedIn, there's some premium. If you have the premium, that does let you look and see who some of your competition is. I don't know the extent of that, but that's one of the small advantages that premium offers, which is, I think it's up to $32 a month. If you try it free for a month, again, be sure if you're going to cancel by the 25th, 26th day, or they will bill you. For those who are veterans, it's free for a year on LinkedIn for the premium service.
yeah,
And
but to get,
a small little hint, if you're going to do LinkedIn, and you try it for a month, or if you want to just pay for it for a couple months, get a gift card at the grocery store so that only a certain amount of money's on the card, and then when the money's gone, LinkedIn can't continue to charge you, because believe me, stopping LinkedIn is not easy.
yeah, and on the veterans for free on the premium, you have to be, your profile has to state your status as a veteran for you to apply for that premium free thing.
Interesting.
So Melanie, did that answer your question? You'll have to unmute to answer, Mike.
I think it did. I'll go take a look. I just wasn't sure how to do the search to see who was competing, who would compete against me.
Okay.
Yeah, the best way to do that is just type in your job title, see who pops up in the first couple pages, and read their profile, see what they've got in their about section, see what job titles they're listing, see what bullet points they have under jobs they have.
And keywords.
If you've done the same thing,
Yeah.
you should modify it and copy it and get it on your profile too.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
that will elevate you when the search is done on LinkedIn. That brings you up into that top 100, if you will, that top 10 screens.
Okay.
Guys, I don't know what parameters exist, but sometimes it won't show you individual, but it will show you how many people you are in the queue with that have applied for that job.
If you're applying through LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So is any of you particular, I'll ask this of Locke and Jeff, Foster, you'll have a comment on this too, is because there's so much going on, especially online these days, is there a recommended number of network groups that one should be involved in? My response to that is, there's stuff going on every day, and there are guests speaking on so many different topics. Using Career DFW for one will help you focus on what your needs are and attend those if you're doing it online. And but as far as there's also the fact that besides general networking groups like South Lake and Focus Group and Frisco Connect, there are what we call SIGs, or special interest groups, which Foster can talk to. But I mean, you could spend literally every day of the week online attending networking group and different group meetings. So who wants to jump in and address that?
I'd be glad to. even though I was the third pick. You guys, that guy right there that you see right now, Jeff, on the screen, that careerdfw.org is your friend, and it will show you what is available by way of groups. And you might want to, you definitely want to look into a professional organization that exists around what your profession is. But that answer is going to vary. That is, we recruiters' number one answer is it depends. But I would suggest that we have wonderful general networking groups like Frisco Connect and South Lake Focus Group. I would suggest that you attend regularly one of those two, according to what you can stomach. Then what your focus would be is to find a special interest group that serves your background. I am available to help you do that. Most of the special interest groups I created, so I can easily figure out what is served best in which one. I would suggest that you regularly attend one of those. If you feel that there is value in another one, if you can stomach it, if you have the time, then definitely do that. But that answer is going to vary. That answer is going to be according to what you have time for.
I like the answer of, at the beginning of your job search, go to as many groups as you can. You find out which ones you like, and after a couple of weeks, you go, okay, I want to go to this one. I go to this one because I get some value out of it. But you have to remember, going to these unemployed groups, everybody's unemployed. You need to make sure that you're connecting with your professional organizations, with anybody, any place that you can connect. Meetup.com, as Locke talked about, beside Meetup, Chamber of Commerce meetings, Kiwanis clubs, where you're meeting people who you can network with. You need to be really conducting at least 2 interviews a day with people, just to talk to people, to find out who they can recommend you talk to. Because when you can start getting 10 or 15 phone calls in a week about a job, that's networking, and most jobs are found through networking, informational interviewing.
Hey, John, can I add something that both Foster and Jeff brought up? I just want to emphasize this to the team. Don't measure the number of network meetings to go to. Measure the value of the networking that you're doing. I want to, because skill building in job search has been changing so much. You have to go to one of those. I like what Jeff says in going to professional association conferences that are near you. Also, this is something that I haven't heard. There are networking groups that can give you emotional and spiritual support and strength. Invest in that, guys. Okay. And Jeff's point of going to, if you're early in the job search, build up your skill build, interviewing, resume writing, networking, personal branding, using the internet, all of those things.
That's right. And on careerdfw.org is a list of professional organizations. Like when I was in training and development in my career, I belonged to ASTD, American Society for Training and Development, and they have a local chapter in Dallas. And you can go as a guest. You don't necessarily have to join and pay the fee, because we know that revenue stream is critical when you're not working full time. You can go as a guest, and many of those people are working, and you can start your networking there. There's a ton of associations, and the list on Career DFW is not exhaustive, but it's robust. Let me say that.
If you're to print it out, it's 18 pages long.
So, is that all?
That's it. Sorry, it's all I have so far. So if your group's not on the list, please let me know so I can add it and make it 19. One other hint, though, when you're going to reach out to these professional groups, call up the president. Have a conversation with the president and ask that person, well, who are the 2 or 3 movers and shakers in this group? Who are the 2 or 3 people that I really need to connect with because they know what's going on in this community. Because then you now have 2 or 3 more phone calls you can make, and you can say, well, you know, Jane, the president, told me I should call you because, you know, you're really connected in the community about this, and, you know, I'd love to be able to pick your brain a little bit.
Yeah. And can I add to that? This is a little bit different, but so I work at Improving Enterprises up in Plano, almost to Frisco, but we are doing and have been since March a lot of free virtual lunch and learns. So if there's any IT professionals out there, I'll put the link in chat, and all the ones that have already been done are pre-recorded. So there's a lot of great information there as well, and maybe just some learning opportunities too, and opportunities actually to network.
And don't forget your alumni association.
Right. To second what Lori was saying, again, recruiters are going to want to know, what have you been doing since you got laid off or when you got furloughed? Again, if you've been sitting around eating bonbons and watching TV, it's not going to get you the job, folks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I heard a lady who was volunteering. She was volunteering with his organization, and she took her skills to help this volunteer organization put together a project or to put together some resource that they could use. And it's like the perfect story if she was going to an interview to be able to say, well, yeah, I volunteered and I took this project using the skills I had to be able to do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
And it was like perfect.
Yeah.
Guys, we have so much technology now. It's kind of making us lazy, especially over on the hiring side. So whenever we have an opportunity to build a relationship, you guys knew I was going to use that word. Whenever we have an opportunity to build a relationship, Rex and I have spent a lot of years doing this kind of thing in order that we may make a connection for you in a lot of cases. One that will add value, and it's just not another thing that's going on. And number one thing on LinkedIn, guys, do not play the system. Don't ask people that you don't know, or do not endorse or recommend people that you don't know. It's just, I mean, that's a honesty is the best policy thing. That is a decision that you have to make. But my suggestion is be honest with everything that you do.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I do have one question because I've seen it on and around on the media lately. Is there an actual difference between a CV and a resume, or is it just 2 terms describing the same thing?
Basically, it's the same thing. CV
Okay.
is commonly used in Europe.
Right. That's what I thought.
The resume in this country.
Okay. Yeah, because CV stands for curriculum vitae, which means the story of my life.
Okay.
Hey, Locke, I think CVs involved a lot of pictures of the people who it belongs to, kind of thing. Is that true?
I haven't seen too many with pictures, and I certainly don't recommend putting your picture in your resume.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard that. I've seen that. So I figured I'd just throw that out there.
It used to be quite the trend before technology got so robust, when you were handing it to people and it was being hand carried to HR. Pictures were very popular.
You're dating yourself, John.
I know.
Recruiters don't like pictures because they can be accused. If a picture's in a resume and you don't hire somebody, they can be accused of discriminating because you're white or you're black or you're male or a female. So again, recruiters, for the most part, reject resumes with pictures in them, unless the exceptions to that would be actors and models.
Good point. Any other questions, ladies and gentlemen?
John, can I pick up on one point?
Mhm.
For individuals that don't think that a volunteer position carries virtually as much credibility on your resume, I want to dispel that. However you use your skill, your competency, your background, your experience, your leadership, that can be put on the resume. That is skill equity, that you can do that. Volunteer at Wounded Warriors, at my organization is in Bible translation. I have volunteer work a arm long. Would love to have you show that. And it's so much more effective when you can show that skill set on the resume, because ultimately on the question of what have you been doing since the pandemic, being a volunteer part-time candidate showing on a resume is so much more so much more effective than, gee, I didn't do anything that could exercise my skill set.
Well,
That's an invitation for people. If you're interested, give me a shout. We'd love to talk to you about a volunteer position.
That's such a key point. Thank you, Rex. There was a gentleman on Frisco Connect this morning from Samaritan's Purse, and they are hiring paid positions. They're seasonal jobs, but they are hiring for leaders to lead the thousands of people who will be packing and processing the millions of shoe boxes that will be sent overseas for Operation Christmas Child. And if you volunteer for any of those activities, like Feed My Starving Children, Samaritan's Purse, that's a double whammy, because not only does it play well on your resume, but while you're doing that volunteer work, you're meeting people, you're building relationships, and you're networking. So it's a double whammy. So I appreciate you bringing that up. Well, we only have a few minutes left.
Hey, John, did you just see that question about, putting religious affiliations on your resume might create some negative feedback? Our thoughts. Does anybody want?
Yeah, Phil, that just popped up. I hadn't had a chance, so go ahead.
For me personally, it does not create any negative feedback. I mean, I think, gosh, what we're seeing today, no matter what you say or you do, someone's going to disagree with you. So if you are affiliated with, for me, example, yes, I'm involved in this ministry and I'm involved with, another ministry, but for me, I am happy to serve, and I want that on my resume or my LinkedIn profile or what have you. And if someone doesn't agree with it, I can't control what they think about that, but that is who I am, and I'm going to put that on there. So when I see a resume personally as a recruiter with a religious affiliation on it, I mean, yeah, I may look at it, but for me, if that's what they're passionate about, I mean, okay, so you're in a marriage ministry or you're in this, and a lot of times for me, it's a great conversation piece. I'm like, oh my gosh, I saw this, and we start talking, and it's really neat what you can learn about people when you put some of those extracurricular or volunteer activities on your resumes.
Yes. And I'd like to pitch in on that too. Guys, for 20 years now, the Career Search Network has been the network that serves the network. Search for You serves that network. That network is the largest job seeker network in the United States. We're in 20 states. We run that. It is a Christian organization on paper for the government and everybody else to see. And it still is the size that it is. It doesn't deter anyone. It doesn't look like. And honestly, if that offends someone, that's just we can't control that. They won't get any benefit from the use of the thing if they keep themselves out of it because somebody said something about Jesus Christ.
Mm-hmm.
And just because you're volunteering for an organization doesn't necessarily mean, it just means that you're giving back to the community. You could be volunteering if you're, packing boxes or doing whatever it is. It doesn't necessarily mean that you believe in what's going on there. You still have your own beliefs, but just the fact that give back. I mean, that's the whole key. You have time right now being unemployed. Give back and help other people right now.
Okay. Very good. Good discussion. Thank you very much, everybody. Well, next week, Rex Sawit will be talking to us about optimizing your resume, design and content. And if you are available, we'd love to have you there. Please share this information with others. Again, you can find the links to our sessions on careerdfw.org. You can also find them at stonebriar.org. If you go to that website at the very top, well, the easy way is just scroll to the bottom of the whole page and type in the word job seekers, and you'll get linked to pages about this workshop, Frisco Connect meetings, and some other resources that might be helpful to you.
And
So
we will have the same link for the next 5 weeks. So whatever you use to get in today, you can use for the next 5 weeks.
okay. Thank you, Jeff.
Yes.
And a reminder to everybody, if there's anything in the chats that you want to keep for yourself, before you leave the meeting, go to the chat box, and in the lower right-hand corner, there will be an image, a circle with 3, depending on what size you have that box. You may see, well, anyway, there'll be a circle with 3 dots. You click on that and you can save chat, and it'll save it as a text file for you. So I want to remind you of that. So as we close, I'd like to offer up a short prayer and wish you all the best. So Father God, today we pray for all those on this meeting and all those looking for employment. Guide them to the company you have for them. Grant them favor with employers. Fill them with patience, perseverance, and wisdom as they search. Provide every need and resource as they wait on you. And we ask that, Lord, that you open doors to new opportunities that you desire for them, and equip them with the knowledge and wisdom needed to take the next right steps forward in this process. And we ask this in the name of Jesus our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
So,
Thanks, everyone.
thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John. Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you. Thank you,
Locke.
Jeff. Thank you, Rex. Thank you, Locke.